Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 30th, 2025 meeting of the Milton of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Shuffle here. We're going to recess for a meeting of the Governor Stoughton trustees so that we can. I'm going to make a motion that we recess from the meeting of the Select Board to open a meeting of the Governor Stoughton trustees. We will return to the Select Board meeting. Can I? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are recessed, and then I have to call the Governor Stoughton trustees to order. So I've now done that.
For all of them, if you called it fantastic. So we have worked hard. But I have no prepared minutes here, our agenda. You have our recommendation. It's short and sweet. I do want to commend you, though, as trustees and your predecessors for forming the committee. I think one of the greatest criticisms we've had is that we were not heard. And you certainly gave us that opportunity. We talked an awful lot amongst ourselves. We talked an awful lot with as many people as we could engage with. So you've certainly taken that away. I also want to thank Nick Connors for maintaining decorum and peace amongst us. He did an excellent job and kept us on track because we were getting derailed very regularly. We did want to deliver something actionable to you. We didn't want this to drag on. We wanted it short and succinct. We know you're busy. We tried to distill everything into as succinct and a short recommendation as we could. It's really only 2 points. So that's all I have. If you've any questions on those 2 points, please. There's some very, very qualified people here with me.
Yeah, we had an excellent group, and I can say that a lot of, even though it was a short report, I can tell you word for word, it was definitely very thoughtful and came with a lot of discussion. So I think there's a lot of really good compromise that went into writing this. So I would welcome, I've had the opportunity to sit with this group and ask questions already. So I'd welcome if anyone here has questions for the committee.
I do not.
None for me.
Okay. Well, maybe I will ask questions so that we haven't wasted your time. So it seems to me that, well, there was not like a broad consensus across everyone on a single plan, which is probably not surprising considering, there's never broad consensus among anybody about something that's that specific. But I'm wondering as chair if you might share some reflections of things that you learned about maybe either the site or about the neighborhood or about the idea of affordable housing.
Yeah, I would just say I do think we had broad consensus that affordable housing is essential in the town. We disagree on whether the scale is appropriate for this particular site. Some of us disagree that the site is appropriate. We had to become educated about it. It's not easy for us to understand what 60% of AMI actually means. Is it really poor in this area of the country? So we had an educational process that Nick guided us through a lot of the time to understand exactly who was going to be living here and how was it appropriate for Milton residents. We felt that there's an opportunity here to do something very special. We just are not sure. And I don't think we're still sure that the scale of it is correct and that it's aimed towards the right people. And I use that word very broadly. We don't know who the right people are, okay? But we felt there were some brilliant ideas. Could it be guided towards teachers, firefighters in the community? Would it attract talent to the town, administrators? Any of the people that perhaps would be qualified to live here, younger people. Maybe this is an opportunity to improve the quality and the breadth of people we would attract into town. But also, there's an element that we feel it doesn't really help the poor. Could we get lesser numbers and have more or a lower AMI? We didn't understand the mechanics behind the RFP, basically. So there was a huge educational element, and we haven't been working long. It's only been 6 months really since we got organized. So, but we did, as I say, want to bring something to you that we felt you could work on. We don't want it to be stalled. And we did use the analogy that everyone loves puppies. We're firm believers. We were unanimous that affordable housing is a very, very needed concept in the town, but perhaps not here and not on this scale.
Okay.
And again, we were divided, but not on that particular topic, I feel.
That was the sense that I got from the last couple of meetings that I sat in, and also had the opportunity to go on the site visit, which I think was helpful for, it turned out you got a pretty big number of folks that came out for that site visit.
Great site visit, led by Steve, of course, who's our local historian and knows all about the site and is a font of knowledge and helped us understand and was really the architect of that second recommendation that we keep the character of the site in the way it was meant as a town farm.
So maybe if we don't have any direct questions for the committee, it might be an opportunity for us to, I don't think we have to come to any hard decisions here. I think probably we want to continue to reflect on the report and have some thought, but we could have a discussion about our own reflections on the report and what we might think of as next steps.
I'm just guilty of being new to this and caught up in so many other things that I apologize, but I'm not the best prepared for this at this point in time.
Totally
You
fine.
know?
I don't know, Mr. Daly or Ms. Hegarty, if you guys have thoughts about the site or what we might want to think about doing next. So this committee was charged with reviewing the RFP process and then also thinking of alternative uses. That their charge ends today. So again, we thank you for that, and we may decide that we want to think about a different set of requirements for a future RFP. We may want to decide to go ahead with the existing RFP. We may want to convene another committee and have them look at the site. I'm not so keen on the third. I feel like death by committee is a thing.
Well, also if we've gotten to a certain point in a process with this, would that option necessarily restart everything? Like, I think we want to have some action come out of this.
Right. And I know that you guys were in touch with there was one remaining proposal on the, because the proposals were submitted last fall, or last summer, was it?
Even longer.
Yeah, even longer than that. And so with obvious fluctuations in the market, maybe we could say we were wondering if the price is still held. One of them still held, but one sort of withdrew. That's
correct, yes. And we were appreciative of the fact that the developer of the one remaining RFP is a town resident. We thought that was a huge plus in the sense that he would have a sense of belonging in the town and a sense of place in the historical context for the site.
Was there a discussion with the developer about the potential to reduce the number of units if that was something that would be economically feasible for them?
We didn't get there. We actually make that a recommendation for you guys to further dig through. And
my understanding too, and you might know more about this, Mr. Daly, has this come up in the Affordable Housing Trust? Have you guys been discussing this?
It has not. So I've only been on one AHT meeting so far since I've joined, so this was not a point of it. But I know when we were talking about this before, with there only being one RFP left, now we had initially thought of going back out for an RFP, but that may have some costs and some time constraints as well. So, I'm not sure if sticking with the one that we have left is the best way forward. But perhaps if we were going to be able to have the units reduced, which I know was a main point of concern, perhaps that would be the way forward. But it's been, a year and a half now. It seems that the market changes. Maybe going back out would be the way we should do this.
Would there be a way to do that, Mr. Milano, that would, you can't give advantages to anybody, but for someone who's sort of stuck with the process, there's not really anything we could offer them other than maybe share some new ideas with us.
You'd be evaluating what comes in from whoever comes in and as it stands, as it is submitted.
And when the committee was talking about potentially reducing the number of units, was there a sense of like what would a number that
Would be palatable.
What was the range?
We didn't get to that stage either,
Okay.
Ben, or Chair, excuse me.
That's totally fine.
We were just interested in seeing if those levers could be changed. We could take it from something like 80% AMI to 30% AMI, perhaps, and does that impact the economics? We didn't get into that discussion, but we would love to understand that.
Right, and AMI, for those who are watching at home, is average median income, which for our easiest sake is actually about $100,000 in Milton. So you can think of 60% AMI as a salary of $60,000 a year for the household, or 30% being $30,000 a year. And, okay, so it seems to me like, yes, John?
I just was wondering, speaking of times when there's never unanimity, the committee unanimously recommends trustees undertake a feasibility study. Is that what we're trying to decide
I
here?
think that would be part of an RFP process.
Okay,
Would be so. For example, if we decided that we wanted to reduce it from 35 units to 25 units, for example, then we would want to look at a feasibility of how does that affect traffic, how does that affect utilities. I know there was some concern about runoff as well. Some of those things we sort of put in the initial RFP after feedback from the local residents there. But I think that is that?
No, just to back it up a
Yes,
little bit,
please.
we're slightly concerned that the infrastructure isn't adequate for the site. It's a quarter of a mile down a dead-end lane, and we don't have bus routes, and we don't know if obviously the lane is narrow, it's a single-lane road. So we were trying to think that if the town could get a traffic assessment study done to see would that neighborhood support the 35 units or whatever would be proposed by the trustees. We were also interested in access to the site. We had discussed proximity to bus routes, and that would appear to be in or around a 2-mile radius. So that was what we were trying to get to. Feasibility study is very, very broad-based. It's slightly nebulous. But we were just trying to throw ideas out there that perhaps you could get some of the town employed advisors in just to, I think, appease or assuage some of the concerns of the residents, because obviously we live on that street, there's 12 houses. If you're going to put in 35 units, we have visions of quadrupling the traffic count. How does that impact Canton Ave at 8 o'clock on a school morning? That kind of stuff. So,
Can't be
and
worse.
that wasn't necessarily addressed, I believe,
Yeah.
in the RFP. So.
In the committee's review, when we're saying 35 units, was there a conversation about the size of the units? As we're talking about reducing these, are these 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, is that out there? Was there an idea of how many people 35 units means in terms of families or
Yes,
singles?
Cheryl and Tom were very good because they have a background in affordable housing and, helping us understand that it's not all 3-bedroom units. So it wouldn't be 35 families per se. There would be a mix of studios, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, that kind of thing. But we didn't get into the nitty-gritty about what that would actually be in terms of a traffic count. We kind of punted that back at you guys.
And in terms of AMI, we're talking about AMI for combined in the units, right? Combined income at 60 or 30%?
I think that's what it ranges from. I think it ranges between 30 and 60%.
Okay.
Well, any other questions or discussions on this? I don't want to drag out the point. So it seems to me like we might want to do a couple of things, and I'm totally open to suggestions on this. So one, I think we should maybe talk to the developer first to see if he has an idea about units and what would be feasible so that we don't have to go through an RFP process again. But if that seems like it's not going to be workable with his plan, then we might have to put another RFP out. I think it'd be helpful to get the Affordable Housing Trust's input on this. They do have some resources, and they may be able to help defray the cost. If we decide that we want to reduce it from 35 to 30 or 25, we could see if there might be some opportunity there from the Affordable Housing Trust to help support that. And then once we kind of have that information, I think we would know what might work best next. And then we'd want to have another open session where residents could come in and also kind of hear the discussion about what would standard proposal look like, a reduced proposal. And I don't know if we can do the traffic question would be one I'd throw over to you, Mr. Milano. If it's been punted to me, I'm punting it back like a rugby match.
Well, it's one of those, chicken or egg things. Like you wouldn't want to do a traffic study for a 35 unit project if there's no intention to build out a 35 unit project. So that's why often you'll see them kind of after something's been proposed, but I can understand the concerns that it could help shape the number of units the road could accommodate. So we could look at having one of our consulting engineers submit a proposal and get a sense of what that might mean in terms of cost. But again, then we're talking about who's going to fund that work, whether the trustees should be paying for that work. It's a pre-development cost associated with the land, but also we try to hold on to that funds to go to, to what we can actually do with it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking if, we could do it as inexpensively as possible, it'd be nice to know what it could support. I mean, instead of coming out with a plan for a certain amount and then not knowing, it'd be nice to know.
Yeah, so my recollection is when we put the initial RFP together, it was done under the guidance of the Affordable Housing Trust folks who had that experience with affordable housing projects, and basically there is a sort of a floor for a developer of like what no longer becomes possible. And I think, so we kind of, at the time, I think we thought the floor was around 30, 32, 35. And there's also the added factor of as long as we're below 10% affordable housing in Milton, we're susceptible to 40B developments. So, and I know with a couple of projects that are online with this, that will get us very close to being at 10%, so we no longer would have the 40Bs. So I kind of agree with Nick in that I hear what you're saying. Like, I like the idea of a spitball estimate, but engineers are very lousy at doing spitball estimates. They're very precise individuals, which is why I'm not an engineer. And they may not necessarily have that ability. But we could certainly ask if there's, I don't know if we want to ask, if there's somebody that we could ask if it's possible to get some sort of a back of the envelope traffic study.
I can ask her.
And then I think if
We don't have any like on-call contracts with like planning.
We do,
Terms
but it
or
would be,
anything like
it
that?
would be an on-call,
it'd be a cost.
sometimes, these, I would say between $8,000 and $15,000,
Yeah.
depending on what we're asking them to look at.
Yep.
I'm thinking more off the seat of the pants, like a 20-foot road handles X amount of traffic, or you know what I mean?
Okay.
Whatever the,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
no,
that's
I
asking
hear
a
what
lot.
I hear what you're saying.
You
I think part of it too is just knowing. I also live on Canton Road, so at 6 in the morning versus 8 in the morning, or Saturday versus a Wednesday rush hour, like it's radically different. So, but maybe if Nick, you could just find out what that cost might be, and then do you know, Mr. Daly, when the next meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust is?
Yeah, let me check the calendar here.
Not to put you on the spot.
Let's take a minute, sorry. July 15th, I believe, pending
Okay.
right now.
And then I think our next meeting is currently slated for, was it July 8th? Right, that's the second Tuesday, because tomorrow's a Tuesday.
We had penciled in the 8th, but there was summer availability issues, so we're definitely locked in for the 22nd.
Okay. Well, let's see about the 8th, maybe. There might just be some pro forma stuff that we can do, and then maybe have a more substantive meeting. So if the Affordable Housing Trust meets on the 15th and can provide us with maybe their read on this as well, and their thoughts about additional resources that might be available, then we could reconvene as the Governor Stoughton trustees on the 22nd to continue the conversation. Then at that point, too, we might at least have ideas about what a traffic feasibility study would cost, if not having something that's back of the envelope / seat of the pants. Does that sound like a good? Just to share my own personal opinion here, I think, I agree that affordable housing is critical in this town, and I think a lot of the developments that we've seen have been a result of the fact that we haven't been sort of planning it out. And I having been to the site, I think this site can support some affordable housing. I hear the residents' concerns that 35 units may be too many. So, in the spirit of sort of compromise and making everybody has to give up a little bit of things. If we can give up 10 units and get some support from the Affordable Housing Trust and have some reassurance for the neighbors that the traffic situation wouldn't be out of control, and if in fact there might be ways to utilize the project to improve the road or improve the facilities around there, that might be of use.
I'm not familiar with the residents. I'm just looking at the committee that we formed, came back to us and unanimously said we should do a feasibility study.
Yes,
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That,
I know the committee was composed of several abutters, and
Okay.
and we are very grateful for your service and for your leadership on that committee. So
With the
yes.
with the comments also on just infrastructure overall to the site, I know we're going to do a traffic feasibility study. Should we consider getting an outside opinion on the infrastructure to the site?
So we will, and it's
That,
what I wrote down in
realize
terms
that might
of
be
sewer
incredibly
and water and sewer.
complicated, but yeah.
And it gets back to specificity to
Right.
dictate what the anticipated flows would be,
Yeah.
what the water demand would be, what the demand on the street would be. So it's again, DPW can certainly provide analysis of the existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
Broadly in terms of whether it wouldn't be able to support a new project. But to get to really nail that down, you need to know how many units, how many people you expect,
Right.
and all that. So that's the kind of level of specificity that would typically come later in the process. But
Right.
in order to try to get some answers, we can
could
do
try
that
to
now.
we
Right.
could try to set like a couple of scenarios, right?
Yeah.
The general sense was that the
Well,
below
35
30
was
units.
the original.
35 units
Yeah.
was the floor, so
Yeah, so that's the other question too,
Yeah.
is we could ask, what's Ralph's company name again?
I forget the name of they have a LLC that formed for this.
Ralph's company. We could ask, sorry to refer to Mr. Parent informally, but we also need to ask him to maybe provide we could forward him this report and ask him to provide some thoughts. And I know sometimes when you're looking at a development, part of the development cost is infrastructure improvements to support whatever's being built. So we could maybe get some clarity from Mr. Parent on what that would be.
Sure.
It'd also be nice to have some, if we're asking them if 35 is a break number, can we have some numbers to back that up rather than just a comment that 35 doesn't work? Less than 35 doesn't work,
Yeah.
Also, too, I don't know if the Commonwealth has any grant programs to support affordable housing developments like this. If there's like a Mass Works for affordable housing or something like that. That's not in my area of expertise when it comes to
Also
the
not in
Commonwealth,
mine.
so I don't know.
Can we
but
task you with that also, Mr. Milano, for a little homework?
There certainly is, but it's an annual program. There are some others, they've really migrated everything to one annual application under the One Stop program that's out, that closes in June of every year. So in terms of a longer term time horizon, there
Yeah.
are programs out there that would support that kind of upfront infrastructure project.
Okay, well, it feels like we have a pretty good consensus about some next steps in information gathering. Anybody else, any thoughts before we close our meeting of the Governor Stoughton trustees?
Thank you for doing this.
Thank you again for your
Thank you.
service. You were released for now, and we may call back on the committee depending on how things move forward. But again, it was so important to have that group of folks together, and I know there was a lot of intense discussions around this, and we're very grateful for your volunteer service, and hopefully the outcome will be something that everybody will feel, if not great about, at least good about.
Well, we all appreciate having a voice, so thank you, guys.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting of the Governor Stoughton trustees. Oh, we have to improve the meeting minutes. Thank you. So we have the meeting minutes from March 11th and May 21st. So as, I don't know if we can approve the March.
I would wait, yeah.
Yeah, we can't approve the March minutes because we don't have a quorum, because Mr. Daly and Ms. Hegarty weren't here. So we could approve the May ones, though. Or we want to just wait until we.
It's up to you, yeah. That would be.
Why don't we, well, let's knock one off since we can't, so we can do that. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from May 21st.
I'll second.
Okay, I've made the motion and it's been seconded by, no, it's totally works, Mr. Cohen. So I think this is just a voice vote. So all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. And now I will make a motion to adjourn the Governor Stoughton trustees.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Hegarty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are back to the select board for public comment. And I don't see any public comments, either online or in person. So we'll just give folks a minute in case they were wanting to put their hands up online or in the room. All right, so we will skip public comment. And now we have discussion, update, approval, Susan Milliken and Stephen Geister regarding the Neponset River Superfund project public hearing and comment letter. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Geister.
I think you've got an electronic copy of that. Thank you. I'm just going to roughly go through this quickly.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, I'm sorry, Richard's not here for this. I know this is his baby.
Well, thank you, Select Board and Mr. Milano. I just wanted to briefly get you up to speed on what's been going on with the Lower Neponset River site, EPA site. And I'll give you a real quick overview, and then I'll dive a little bit into this, but not too much detail. It's very, very detailed. And so just to start off, so the lower Neponset River, the bottom 3.7 miles from the Baker Dam up to the confluence of the Mother Brook and the river were designated a Superfund site in March of 2023. So it's been about 2.5 years. I'm sorry, 2022 was added to the national priority list, and activities began on the river at that time. The activities to date. Well, first let me just tell you about, so I'm a member of the CAG, the Citizen Advisory Group, along with Dr. Susan Milliken in town. And I've been part of it since their first meeting the EPA conducted, just to get people educated a little bit about a year and a half ago. We formed the committee about a year ago, probably 15 to 20 residents of 2 in Milton, rest of everybody else is Hyde Park, and mostly Hyde Park right now because that's really what it impacts out of the gate. And then we've got a few Dorchester and Mattapan people on board. Probably grow the CAG as we get downriver, and it has bigger impact on Milton and Dorchester. So we meet monthly. We discuss different things. The EPA usually comes in and presents to us. The EPA has hired, per the CAG's will, a company called SKIO, and they basically advise us and help us coordinate as a CAG. It's pretty common at a Superfund site to have a CAG set up for the citizens to be able to give input into the EPA, and I'm learning all this. This is my first time through on this. And they've been very helpful, and they come to our meetings, they help us manage our meetings, they help us organize as a group. We have a couple different subcommittees. We have a technical subcommittee, which I sit on with some engineers, primarily a couple gentlemen that are part of the Neponset Watershed Association that are very knowledgeable about this area, in that area. They also have an outreach subgroup that is trying to get the word out to everybody, and we're really just getting that activity going as we speak. Just because there wasn't a lot to talk about. Yeah, it's a Superfund site, but now that we start having details and we start having an understanding, we're trying to communicate, what exactly is going on. So the Superfund details, like I said, it's a 3.7-mile stretch, and the EPA has been doing some remediation work on the side of the river. The Lewis Chemical was about 2 years ago. They started and finished that. It's a 1-acre site on the Hyde Park side of the river. Not part of the Superfund, but not part of this activity. It's kind of a separate entity that goes on, but was actually one of the major causes of pollution into the river. So that was cleaned up first. They finished it, I think it was fall of last year. It was about a year project. It cost somewhere between $3.9 and $4 million to clean up that 1 acre. So it's very, very highly polluted with PCBs primarily. They have since started on also further down the river on the same side of the river in Hyde Park on what they call the, I'm trying to find the name of it here. Anyway, it's Riverside Square, so I think there's like a kind of a strip mall there. It's behind that activity. And in the 80s, they had dredged the river and took in all that polluted soil out of the river and dumped it on the shore. And basically, they're remediating that. I haven't seen the overall dollar value for that is, but it said it's at least a year project. And again, they're digging and hauling away. And so recently they completed the upper 1 mile of the river, and what they call is an ECA, environmental evaluation and cost analysis report. That report is somewhere around, I think it's 423 pages of tables and data and all kinds of data and things, and very, very interesting. But you'll see in the packet I handed out, there's a summary of what they did, a little bit about the river, and a summary of the four options that they presented to us about a couple weeks ago. And so the process works, and when the EPA has finished, they finished their analysis of a section of a river, they come up with recommendations on how to clean it or what their recommendations are. They came up with 4 different options for this part of the river. And the first option is basically to do nothing, cost nothing, do nothing, which we all know is not a solution. And then they came up with 3 other options. Option 3 and 4 have, as part of that removal of the T&H dam, the Tileston and Hollingsworth Dam, which is a mile down, and basically that's where they divided it up, 1 mile to that dam, and then 2.7 miles is the second phase, which is from that dam down to the Baker Dam down off Adams Street. And they have completed the taking of the samples of that as of last fall. It was about a year's activity. A couple of us went down and visited them on the river, and they were taking samples in the river, on the side of the river, water samples, soil samples. Actually did a bunch of mollusks. They actually planted them in there and let them grow in the river. Take them, actually do analysis of them and how much pollution they absorb. So very detailed. But above the dam, it's very, very contaminated. The EPA's commented unofficially it's one of the top 3 most polluted rivers left in America that hasn't had any remediation done to it, or very little remediation. So it's up there. According to them, it has very high visibility, which is good. From a funding perspective, they mentioned to us, but they won't share the details, there's 70 companies or former companies or companies that added to the pollution over the course of the last 50, 60, 70 years. Some of them still in existence, and they're going through the process of trying to get as much money as they can to help with the cleanup of the river. So, and they don't really share that. All they shared with that is in November of every year, they go to a board. I can't remember what it's called, but there's a certain board where they present what they would like to do to the river, option 1 through 4, and then also what the funding is, and they try to say, okay, here's where we're at, trying to recuperate that money from the polluters through the years. So we have no idea where they're at, and their other comment was as well, if the money's not, all the money's not there, then they'll go to the federal fund, which there's a fund there for cleanup, and ask for that money there. So again, they haven't shared a lot about that. Will they come if they don't have all the funding, come to the state? I don't know how the whole process works. They haven't shared that with us yet. But the current ask is that they submitted the ECA. On July 9th, they're having a Zoom call or a virtual meeting to go through the data package, and they have a presentation. I think Mr. Milano forwarded you guys a link to a 17-minute video, which is basically somebody just walking through a slide deck, which is kind of much more detailed than what I'm providing, but not the same detail you'll read in 423-page documents. So you'll have a chance to go through it. And it's very, very well done, actually very nicely done by the EPA. Just released it last week, so we just got it. And the idea is They give 30 days. The CAG has asked for another 15 days beyond that, because it's only, if the 9th to the 13th, we have to respond by the 13th, so there's only a couple days in there. We've asked them for at least 2 more weeks for us to digest presentation, digest what they told us, and then give us an opportunity to respond. So we think it's going to be 2 weeks beyond that 13th date that we'll have an option to respond to it. The EPA unofficially has recommended option 4. Of course, I mean, that's, the way to go. Basically, what they said is if they take any of the other options, option 2 or option 3, it doesn't fully clean the river to the same depth or the same level, and they may have to go back and do some additional remediation, especially after they've done the downstream work. And then the other discussion we've been having is what about downstream over the other side of the dam and out into the marshes.
That's what I was
and
going to
so on.
ask, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a study done, I think Mr. Milano, in one of his papers, talked about that. I think there was 12 samples taken a few years back, and it was polluted for sure. And if it's, some of it's going over the dam for sure, and the marsh is a perfect collection point for pollution, so I think that would kind of be the next step after they finish coming out with the ECA for the bottom phase 2 part of the overall. So, what I'm trying to do is just get the word out that this is available for people to review. I'm going to start leaving these brochures around town so people have a chance. I've talked to the CO at Council on Aging. I've talked to the Milton Times. I've talked to some other organizations just to get the word out there that, what's going on, and you have an opportunity. Longer term, is they're more asking, what do we want to do with the water, the river, when it's done? It probably will, depending on which course they take to remediate it and how they build it back up. It could change somewhat the course, the way it moves. Do we want to put boat ramps? Do we want to put canoe ramps? Do we want to have, picnic areas and those kind of things? So they're not, I don't think they're looking for that exact thing now, but they just want to start us to get involved with the process. And also the DCR has been part of this in the Ponset watershed. And we're all part of the CAG, and we talk about these things. So they're really just looking for the town to start to participate in, kind of the activities that are going on. So I'm happy. I mean, that's kind of all. I didn't really, come up with any formal presentation, but I'm happy to try to answer what I can. I'm an engineer, but not an environmental engineer, so it's kind of out of my realm. But I got to say, I can't compare it to other ones, but the EPA has been spectacular to work with. They've been great. They're very open. They're very tell us answer all our questions. They go out of the way to go to our meetings, to come to our meetings, and they work some pretty long days because they're on site during the week, and we have our meetings at night, and they're up and about, at 8 o'clock, at 9 o'clock at night with us. So it's been a good experience for me. I've lived in Milton 28 years on Canton Ave, on the other end of Canton Ave, and I pretty much walk the river almost every single day. And I've heard when I moved in it was polluted, but don't fish there, and certainly don't drink the water, but not to the magnitude. And I think the primary, what they found is PCBs, but there's all kinds of heavy metals, there's all kinds of other carcinogenics and bad things that are in the water, but the PCB is the main thing that needs to be cleaned up. So, thank you.
Thank you, very thorough. Questions from the members?
It seems to me that sort of as you get to RA3, there's discussion of removing the dam.
Yep.
So that is seems like a major, that's a pretty big project, right? And does DCR currently own the dam?
Yeah, they own the dam, and they said it would add about a year onto the project to do, because they have to clean on the upside of it very thoroughly, and then they have to demolish it and take it out and do it. It's a pretty big to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has DCR weighed? I'm sure they're going to submit their own comment.
I don't know if they have officially weighed in, but in all our meetings, they said we need to take it out of there or we need to essentially rebuild it because it's in very bad condition.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't serve any purpose at this time. There was some discussion in our last meeting about what the water levels would be and how that would all change.
Yeah.
And one of the consultants that the technical committee brought in just to give us, they read it through and gave us our opinion, their opinion, and they were concerned about the EPA had not done a good enough job of looking at the modifications of the water levels when the dam's gone, and how does that impact water flow and
My next
pollution.
question was going to be, so over the winter we had the flooding
Yep.
on the trolley tracks, which presumably, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought it had something to do with the dam itself. Am I wrong?
No, it did. So
And would this help
I don't think
future
because it's so,
situations,
yeah,
or-
I think it's
okay.
so far upriver that it doesn't really impact down
Okay.
below. The answer that I heard about the flooding was they had replaced all the wood on the top of the dam there, and so the water level's been significantly higher over the last months.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the cause of it, but they said because of the water level so high, if there was an impact in the water flow, which there was because of the ice, it
Yeah.
backed it up. The comment from the DCR, that's only the second time that's ever happened in the history of them, of that magnitude of flooding. But I would defer that to the DCR
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, because the dam, the Baker Dam was broken for a very long time.
Right.
It took a good part of a year to get it repaired and fixed, and now it's back to what they consider normal, and the water level's up significantly from what it used to be. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Other questions?
Not being an engineer either, but you would think if a dam was taken out, if anything, the level would go down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's nothing to hold it back. and
Right,
it's-
right.
And for the TNH dam, it's not a flood control dam, so it's not serving a purpose in terms of protecting those flows. And in fact, in anticipated heavy rainfall, the dam is lowered purposefully so that no water really builds up behind it. So it's managed to a degree, and it's lowered ahead of big storms or ahead of big rainfalls to let the water flow over it.
And is the TNH, just looking at the map on the last page,
Yep.
the TNH dam, is that Milton right there, or is that,
It's actually Hyde Park.
That's right, okay, yeah, it's Hyde
Milton
Park. Oh,
starts
okay,
just
I
below
got
the
it.
dam
Yeah.
on this side of the river.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
The site, the cleared site, if you can make it out right next to it, that is what's been colloquially referred to as the paper mill site in the MBTA community zoning. So that site has been rezoned for 179 units under the approved rapid transit plan. So, in terms of the Superfund cleanup and everything in that area, it might make that site more potentially attractive down the road.
I think the idea of having a nice cleaned river with a great waterfront and, kayak or canoe access or something, that would be really lovely and a nice change. So I know I'm sort of channeling Mr. Wells here because I know how much he cares about this and
Yep.
particularly the landing. And when he and I were speaking about this, must have been like last year or something. The marshland, as you sort of alluded to earlier, definitely contaminated. And I know since they're working from as far upstream as possible, going down, just assuming that means that things were going to get churned up and sort of head down. So is there going to be a long-term, is there sort of a commitment to then, after this work is finished, looking at what happens beyond into the end of that salt marsh there?
Yeah, so right now, there is nothing, beyond that. I mean, I don't know if the town should start to petition the EPA or not. I'll ask that question at our next meeting, which is actually tomorrow night.
Okay.
I'll ask that question on, kind of how do we continue the process. I think the Ian Cook, who's the president or director of the Neponset Watershed, has been on top of that, and he probably has an answer
I'm
for
sure
that.
they've thought about it, but
Yeah,
otherwise
yeah.
it's kind of like whack-a-mole, and
Right,
the
just keep pushing
PCBs
it.
pop up
Yeah.
over here instead of over
Yeah.
there.
But and it gets down now in Boston Harbor, and it starts to get into that impact of that and what's going on there. So, yeah, I don't. I've asked that question, but nobody's really given me a good answer. It's like, let's deal with this piece first, and we'll work our way downstream. So,
Yeah, Mr. Colleen?
You would even think there would be some monitoring during the process, too.
I believe there is. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is that there will be a major impact when they start this, but we're a year away probably at best, maybe two, but from actually taking the material and moving it out from the river and how many truckloads and so on. And I know for the Lewis Chemical one, it was coordinated with town, and I know for sure that they were coordinating with the police department and DPW in regards to the Riverside area. I think it's 10 trucks a day or something, and I don't know if they had they just started hauling in May. And how much of it goes through, I think it's just barely touches Milton or a couple of Milton roads. But I do know that they were, because I asked the question, they said they were definitely coordinating with the traffic, it's not Lieutenant Alba, but whoever the new traffic lieutenant is, and the DPW.
Great.
Yeah.
And so for us, we have this, a letter here.
Yes, I drafted a comment letter that has the town supporting the RAA4 alternative, which includes the removal of the dam. The letter also notes that it identifies the paper mill site that I just referenced. The full document that the EPA produced does identify the paper mill site as a potential staging and loadout area for the entire cleanup. So I think if that were to become the identified site, there should be some conversations about what those impacts might look like. You know, the transportation access makes sense because you can go down Truman and out and get out to the highway from there. But it would be a significant impact potentially in terms of if that's the loadout staging area for this entire cleanup, and that's where the dam is, it makes sense. However, I just note that the town would expect to have continued dialogue and communication about that potential usage.
That's great.
And then I did, as was alluded to here, speak to the efforts that the town has had in terms of Milton Landing, in terms of the testing we've done before with Boston and Quincy, and the results we've gotten that show the contamination on the saltwater side below the Baker Dam. And just the recommendation from us in terms of how do we get the EPA to focus on it was just to bring it up at every opportunity you can. So while this report has nothing to do with that, it's an opportunity to bring this up. So I've done that in the letter as well.
It's always good to flag things early. So we have the comment letter. Any further discussion on this? I'll take a motion on the letter. If somebody is...
Was that letter in the package?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, our computer's restarting over here, so...
Yeah, I was going to say something.
That's all right.
Oh, it did, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. It's 18% of the way there. All right, so...
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve the comment letter to the EPA regarding Phase 1 cleanup alternative of the Neponset River Superfund project.
Great. Have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. You'll have your letter, and please let us know how this continues to progress.
Yeah,
This is
I'll
very,
keep you in
very...
the loop for sure. So I was, with Mr. Wells, I was keeping him in the loop as we were going, but I certainly will keep you in the loop.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm
Gersten.
also going to make sure I reach out to the planning board too, with the zoning and everything, so.
That would be
because
wonderful.
there could be some impact there. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Next item in our agenda is MBTA Communities Act and District Compliance Application. I just have a very short thing that I would like to read real quick, if the board doesn't mind, and then we can, I think, we'll see what we have to discuss the application letter. I worked with town council to put this paragraph together. So I wanted to address some of the conversations that the select board had over the past couple of weeks in executive session around the MBTA Communities Act. Obviously, those conversations are all confidential, but I can share a few things. The first thing I want to do is thank Tom Doherty for his volunteerism and the time he's dedicated to the town on this issue and many others. There were a number of rumors circulating about this process. The select board could not make any decisions prior to our meeting on Thursday of last week, and any suggestions to the contrary are not factual. The last remaining question about our classification status was answered by Judge Gildea in his decision to dismiss the taxpayer lawsuit last Thursday, in which he referred back to the SJC decision that confirmed HLC's authority to set the status and Milton's designation as a rapid transit community. So I just wanted to say that. Obviously, what we talk about, as I said in here, in executive session is privileged, but I felt like it was important to read that. Mr. Milano, we are going to go through the application here?
I did distribute the district of compliance application in terms of what I've been able to fill out. So what the application looks for is a description. You have to repeat where HLC has categorized us and our obligations under the statute and the regulations, and then describe each of the districts in detail, pulling from the compliance parameters that are produced by UTIL in terms of their work and the planning board's work. That went into it. So we described each of the districts in accordance with the application. It asked some additional questions in terms of the affordable housing components and requirements, and then ultimately does seek a letter from the town clerk that says that there are no other zoning bylaws that are newer than this. So that is a draft of the application that I've shared with the board. I would note that we're not submitting it. I don't expect this week. There are a bunch of materials that are required that the town clerk still has to prepare that go with any zoning bylaw, not particular to this. So I would expect that to go in early next week, hopefully, but certainly ahead of the July 14th deadline.
Okay. If we retain our meeting on July 8th, we could potentially review. Is everybody here going to be around on July 8th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can review it one more time
Okay.
before we
Sure.
we approve, because I think it would be nice to have all of the i's dotted and t's crossed.
Sure. And the main missing material is it's referred to as the Form 7, which is a form that has to be prepared for any zoning bylaw. So that's what is not yet prepared.
Okay. So we can discuss now MBTA communities, if there's anything that folks would like to bring up.
I have a few words to.
Okay.
Reservation of rights are three words with more significance at this point than I think most people realize. Town council recommended including those words in our action plan at the time it was filed several weeks ago. But there was resistance to include those words in our declaratory judgment case that was going to be filed by Tom Doherty, a local attorney, and caused him to resign as he believed that we would not have cause without that clause. I realize some are concerned that the 25% plan is the best path forward, but the fact is we really don't know. So I feel it would be reckless of us not to include a reservation of rights clause in our submission. And here again, we're being asked again to submit a 25% plan, and I would ask others, as others have before me, that we include a reservation of rights clause in a cover letter to our submission. So I would like to propose a motion that we include a cover letter with our 25% plan, reserving the right to challenge our classification at some point down the road.
Okay, is there a second? In absence of a second, we'll just move forward. But thank you for sharing those thoughts. Anything else? I know, Ms. Haggerty, you probably don't want to participate in this discussion. Mr. Daly, is there anything you'd like to add?
There's one thing, yes, that I would, this has obviously been contentious and it's going on for a while, but I think where we stand now with this being submitted in the coming weeks, what I think we, as the select board, hopefully in collaboration with the planning board, should be working on is the town comment. And whether that is town halls or whatever format we're putting that together, where we discuss with the town what this zoning means. There's been significant changes since this was initially proposed. We have new sites, we have new neighborhoods, new people who may not have been paying attention as much as all of us have been. And I think they deserve the right to understand what all this zoning means, and they deserve the right to have questions on zoning. And I think we should not look at this as a set it and forget it. I know that's been said before, that if we zone, that we're not allowed to change that, and I do not think that is correct. And I think we should be going out and setting together a plan for town halls, public comment, and sharing this with all the folks in Milton that would like to be informed.
I think that is an important and excellent suggestion. I know previously, when we worked on the last 25% plan, the planning board had hosted a couple of public forums. We know if they're planning on doing the same for this.
And I do not know. I don't have an update on that. Between now and the next meeting, I can connect and provide an update.
I think the idea of a jointly hosted information session with both boards would be both, I think, helpful to have everyone there, and also a nice display that we're working together on this. And my understanding is that the planning board also just voted on Thursday to go under
Economic feasibility study analyze whether additional limits of affordable housing would be supported by the zoning and by the market. So the zoning as written requirement that HLC did allow with the regs. The language also says that if we get a study showing 15% is allowable, that goes into effect automatically. MAPC scope of work will look at 15%, 18%, 20% affordable rather than keeping it at the 80% AMI. So there might be an opportunity to craft a bylaw to change the affordability requirements within it if it's backed up by this study. So that work will take place. It might be a stretch, but possibly. Yes.
Okay. We don't want to throw a bunch of material at the warrant committee at the 11th hour.
10, if we get the market study to show 15% is allowed, it automatically goes up to 15. To do anything beyond 15 at 80% AMI would require.
Then I think, so if we're going to meet on July 8th, I think it would be worth letting the planning board know, jointly hosting a couple of information sessions. I also would recommend that we may look at a couple of different venues so that residents in different places to get to.
Arts Center in East Milton, maybe the high school, if we think they're going to be a lot more attendees. The high school can be a lot of parking, not as big as a town meeting. On those lines. I think if we're going to do it in the summer, before school starts, we're going to need to have one or two because people are going to be away. And so
A couple of those days, and probably I would think like a weekday evening would be a good choice.
Okay.
Even for our board, like as long as we could get 3 of us there, I think that would be good, knowing that people are traveling over the summer, and same for the planning board.
last meeting, when you're saying 15 to 18%, you're talking about, is that percentage town-wide? Or are we thinking about changing the percentages for different projects?
So what I meant was it's for applicable projects under the MBTA communities
Okay.
only.
Under the new zoning?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, as making it easier to build, a 3-family. So those would be not included in the affordability requirements as it stands. Okay. If we're able to dial that up to 15%, it would be 8 units or more would have at least one affordable unit, and therefore for each of the projects. Assess if there's a way to increase that to 18% to 20%, or maybe keep it at 15%, but go from 80% of the median income down to 60% of the median income, just for kind of round numbers.
What would be to get to our needed 10% in the town?
We're guaranteed
Yeah.
10%.
So, no, the 40Bs are built out as designed, then we will be in excess of the 10% required for the subsidized housing inventory.
Okay.
Without any changes. That will change again is once the 2030 census numbers are done and our housing unit number changes, because right now our 10% is based on 2020 census housing units. So we're in good shape for probably once everything, assuming everything jump over that 10%, likely until the next census.
Okay.
So item number 6, anti-bias training. I think most of us know and respect very much as a former member of the school committee suggesting anti-bias training. Do you want to remarks about both the letter as well as what this would entail?
I don't have anything, Mr.
Okay.
Chair, in the past and have brought out, and there are options for us if that is something that the board would like to consider from there.
Thoughts from the
So this is feedback or recommendations that all elected officials receive to bias training?
Not as a regular kind of part of the job, but we have engaged with Maya for various types of training to everybody to attend. And sorry, Maya is our insurance.
Yeah, just, I think in the year 2025, like most organizations, state government, annually, we have to update our inclusive leadership training, anti-bias training. You know, it's just,
We are asking your opinion.
yeah. I think it's kind of like,
Iterations, I think at town meeting, I've heard the phrase representation matters often. I think we have all of our notes electronically in a lot of ways. So I think absolutely we should look into what our options are for anti-bias.
The elected board, so
Okay.
planning board, select board, school committee.
Yeah. Us, in terms of our relationships.
Mr. Cohen, you have anything to
Nope.
add? You know, there's a number of online anti-bias trainings that you can sort of engage in individual folks to think about what it feels like to be in somebody else's shoes. And I will say that anti-bias refers to a whole swath of different things. It doesn't just refer to race. And I think it would be great if we could look into see, would it be through Maya most likely?
Yes, I mean, that would be a quick option for us. It might, and I can report back from there.
Yeah, maybe report back on what
Sure.
they've got. And
Okay.
then, we have some individuals who live in town that provide some insight. So that might be helpful.
Will do.
Justice Committee, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
Maybe we could ask
Sure.
them if they also have thoughts. Moving along. Oh, switching to the fest.
The vet's done. It's cold in here.
So we are.
So we had previously, was it our last meeting? It might have been our, maybe 2 meetings ago, talked about how the an update as of June 25th in terms of where things stand presently, in terms of $1 million in excess and as well. And since we talked about that a bit already, I'll leave that as well. And since we talked about that a bit already, I'll leave that there. In terms of on the expenditure side, as again we've talked about previously, the pressures on the budget in our employee benefits, particularly in health insurance, as we had the pressures on the budget in our employee benefits, particularly in health insurance, as we had higher numbers of enrollees than the budget could absorb, and snow and ice, as we've had a more expensive. So where that stands in terms of closing out the year is that. So where that stands in terms of closing out the year is that we had I've approved $1 million transfer out for the Milton Public Schools. Did at their meeting last week. The same forecast on where we expect things to land. We draw that reserve fund down to a $0 balance. Things to land. We draw that reserve fund down to a $0 balance, and then in order to balance the rest of the budget, we would recommend various appropriations transfers. Budget B, based on where departments will end at the fiscal year end unspent dollars. So the legal budget, the select board budget, the police department budget, anticipating pretty decent turnbacks. So we'll seek to move some of those monies around to pretty decent turnbacks. So we'll seek to move some of those monies around to move it where there are designate Steve Rhines as the member who has the authority to sign off on these, as long as they're in keeping with what we presented to the warrant. So where that leaves us is we'll have a meeting next week, it sounds like, July 8th, excuse me,
yeah.
to the warrant. So where that leaves us is we'll have a meeting next week, it sounds like, July 8th, excuse me.
Yeah.
So we can try to have more exact numbers in terms of what we expect to move. And we can present that on the 8th, or the select board in terms of what we expect to move. And we can present that on the 8th, or the select board can vote to designate a member to sign off on these, designate between now and the deadline to take all these actions, which is July 15th. We can revisit now and the deadline to take all these actions, which is July 15th. We can revisit on the 8th.
Are you guys
visit on the 8th?
Are you guys going to have a meeting before in the next week or two? Going to have a meeting before in the next week or two?
Signing off on this, I think we would
Yeah.
arrange a meeting so we can go through the books.
If the board's comfortable with that, the board, I would think tonight should vote to authorize the Select Board Finance Committee any necessary year-end transfers.
Barring any
Any necessary year-end transfers.
barring any deviations from standard. Okay. I'll take that as that language. I'll take it as a motion if anyone wants to make it. Well, because we're charging the finance. Well, because we're charging the finance committee. Yeah, you should make it.
We can't
Yeah, you
make
should
it.
make it.
Okay, I
So
didn't realize.
Give us the
I mean, I'll
authority.
make it, but.
yeah, so
Give us the
I mean, I'll
authority.
make it, but.
yeah, I'm happy to A to pot B so long as it doesn't disrupt the the already existing plans for government. Just if the select board budget is under by 200,000, then we can move
Right.
100 from one to the other.
A second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
You guys should vote, because
Aye.
otherwise we don't have quorum.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 8. Okay.
Sure.
Item 8, we have Milton Budget Coordination Committee Charge and Membership. Coordination Committee Charge and Membership.
Sit at the town meeting, select board meeting. So we incorporated a couple changes since that last discussion, which was to have the committee report back to in terms of a recommendation on its charge and whether it should continue into fiscal 27. We added the one resident to be appointed by the select board, one resident to be appointed by the school committee. Changes that have been changed. Changes that have been changed.
And I know, we didn't officially appoint Mr. Walker to that
Not yet. No.
position. Okay. So any further thoughts on this committee? At length. So I would accept an approval, or I'd accept the motion to approve the committee charge and membership. If anybody wants to make.
Committee charge and membership
Great. Okay.
for
Second.
the Milton Budget Coordination Committee.
And seconded by Ms. Hegarty. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Would it be out of be appointed to that? Should we wait for a future meeting? Or
I was just making note. What we could do at our next.
would it be out of be appointed to that? Should we wait for a future meeting? Or
I was just making note. What we could do at our next meeting is actually appoint both the members.
9, discussion approval contract with Capital Strategic Solutions for a financial and operational review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Milano.
This is something that. No, I'm looking for it in the packet. Did I not include it in the packet? Does anybody remember
I
seeing
don't
it?
remember seeing this in the
I don't
packet.
either.
So.
Seeing it either.
Okay, I will describe it, and then we could approve it on the 8th.
Okay.
If the board is open to it, or the board could approve it tonight. So a municipal public administration type firm come in and talk with staff and review processes, procedures, controls, and offer a suggestion to software that's being used, identify places where improvements could be made there. So we sought proposals to do that, to this in Marblehead, I believe, recently, and have retired folks on their team that would come in with tons of experience and be able to potential rooms for improvement, what's working well, what's not working well. And the cost is $28,000. So I apologize that I did not, but that is the broad scope, and I was just trying to pull it up so I could describe in more detail what I'm looking at. Give me one moment.
What is the end product that this,
The stakeholders as we kind of see fit. So something to incorporate all of us. I think the opportunity here to do that, I think, is helpful. And it's, this came up because of, we all acknowledge that there are things we can all do better and differently. So to go over, financial policies, adequacy of budgets, town school communications, organizational structure, HR, payroll processes in terms of both the process that we use, the software and technology, and then to take it all together into a report that provides both short-term and long-term recommendations.
Have we done one of these before? And when?
Identified more like governance suggestions, so like, appointed treasurer versus elected treasurer, and town meeting suggestions and suggestions for the warrant committee. This is more about kind of getting into more of the nitty-gritty in terms of how, staff are working or not working and how systems are working.
With the project take?
They said 3 to 6 months, depending more on terms of engagement with the town and how long it takes to get.
can I just ask, so I know that given the events of school budget issues were coming to light, or January, so it seems like the scope has exceeded to have a health check on processes and procedures and systems. If the town's processes are also lumped in with it.
Yeah, finance background, so
Okay.
that has been part of the main.
Like the question that I'm asking
Yeah, no, I
is,
understand.
they're going to get to pay a primary focus of
Correct.
MPS. Okay.
Do we
Shared it with them. We shared it again in the last couple of weeks, and I met with the superintendent to talk about it, and
That was
he's
amazing.
on board.
Superintendent
Yeah,
Phelan's on
so,
board.
yeah.
So I vote for it. But let's put it as a July 8th item, and
Yep.
then I don't think that it will make a week's difference, I guess, in terms of getting operational. But it's a, and I guess my question would be to, what would be the role for our big budget committee? Or I would think that would be a body that might be involved in that, or
It feels like the more natural place for it to land, and can have the same
and then
kind of
the
feedback.
people can
direction.
report back out from that. Okay. So we'll consider that on July 8th, and we'll stand by for the
Sure.
for the agreement.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all, Mr. Milano. Discussion approval, liquor license.
Mr. Chair, before we move.
Yes, Mr. Daly.
I just want to
Sorry.
stay on that last point, just this is occurring to me now. So if we they make suggestions or they're responsible for implementation of the suggestions, and we think 4 are things that we should forward with, what would be the path for that? Does that committee then move forward to the warrant committee? Do we?
Yeah. Well, also too, it's just if, I want to make sure that the school get ownership of this as well. I wouldn't, I think this kind of treads in the bigger committee and the school committee in terms of, like, I would hate for there to be findings from a report that, really for sure at this time, not saying the rest of the town government doesn't, but in terms of people's lanes, right? If this were an expanded lane, would the school committee feel the same level of ownership over? I guess is the question.
I don't know if there's a good answer there. I just note
Yeah.
that this larger committee doesn't
Yeah.
have the authority to change anything. The school
Okay.
committee does, so it's more
Yeah.
about the school committee need,
Right.
by the flip side, this committee can't necessarily direct town and
Yeah.
departments to change. So it has to be, everybody has to take ownership for their piece, because ultimately that's
Okay.
who's that implement changes.
Yep.
Yeah, and then ultimately, the authority sits here at the select board for the whole kit and
Right.
caboodle. So I think those are good questions. It's something good to keep in mind as we move forward with
I
this.
just know all too well how government works.
Yeah, yeah.
You touch it, you own it.
Right,
Or someone might not own it.
right. It could turn into a hot potato. But
Just gotta ask that question.
it's something for us to keep in mind, I think, as we
Yeah.
read through what Mr. Milano is going to send to us, and then as we think about both this committee as well as our continued, sort of fiduciary
Yeah.
responsibility of the town, how we'd want to interact with this group. All set?
Yep.
Great. Moving along, discussion approval update liquor license zones per request of the Joint Committee on Consumer Protection and Professional Licensure for the home rule petition for 5 additional liquor licenses, House Bill 4089. Mr. Milano?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We discussed this briefly before town meeting one night, but I don't have a map. And just for people watching, the town did approve a home rule petition at town meeting in February to authorize 5 additional liquor licenses anywhere in Milton. For Milton, we received from the committee that oversees these bills in the legislature has been a request to refine where in Milton these licenses might go. So we owe a map essentially that identifies. We have not prepared it, so I'll kick that to July 8th if that's okay with the board.
And my remembrance from our discussion at the school was that essentially we're just thinking that this is a map of zoning, so that nobody's going to have a restaurant pop up next door to their house.
It would still be
unexpectedly.
subject to zoning.
Yes, right. Okay.
Zoning.
All right, so then we'll look at the map on July 8th, which is suddenly filling up a little bit.
Yeah.
Then we have discussion update October 27th, 2025, fall special town meeting potential warrant articles and timeline.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I put, hopefully in the packet, a timeline of what it would look like to get to that Monday, October 27th special town meeting deadline, with the warrant closing in early August, which would give the months of August and September and really the days of October for the warrant committee to review, vote on, and write comments on the warrant articles. Put them to the warrant committee. There's nothing I'm aware of outside of the lighting bylaw that's been discussed and is the one about alcohol in town land. Those are the 2 kind of outstanding warrant articles that were at town meeting. And then we should also talk about as a board next steps on those 2 articles, or what that might look like, and what process that might look like to get into version.
Based on our experience with the last go-around, could we frame this? And put it up on the wall
Get it tattooed.
I like the dates.
So on the lighting bylaw, I thought to being wrapped up, it just felt like it was more of a worry, I think, about the time that was our former member Bradley was kind of the point person on that. So do we have that language that was the most
Correct.
recently updated? So maybe what we can do is forward that language that we have now to former member Bradley. That she's aware of to that
Okay.
language. And if not, I'm not going to say July 8th for that one because I feel like we've already plugged a bunch of stuff in that, but we could do that one on the second meeting in July.
Okay.
And then for and I'm open to suggestions on that too.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for the probably more sensitive topic of do we want to have, or do we want to extend the right to have a one-day liquor license beyond town buildings to including outdoor town property? We had a public hearing on both of these prior to Mr. Daly and Ms. Haggerty joining. The lighting one had really no citizen comment other than they thought it was a good idea. The liquor license one, to me, seems like the one where we had some thoughtful input from the Ms. Carroll was representing.
Milton Coalition?
Yes, the coalition, thank you. And it seemed to me like we were going to think about adding some of that language, but it might be helpful to circulate a redlined version of language. And these were suggestions like having tips-trained bartenders, having just liquor, but I guess liquor was permitted. And then I think if we could circulate that now, and then also have that meeting, is that what it is, July 25?
22nd.
22nd. Maybe we can look at it on July 8th,
Okay.
and then Mr. Cohen, if you've got any questions or thoughts about it, could at least start the discussion then. And then if we agree to it, then we could we don't have to put it on the 22nd.
But we also, I feel like with this particular item, have struggled with the version before we take it up.
I think
Just
that's a
to
good question.
make sure that we are done with it.
So I think what we could do
Because
is
I feel like what happens is go up and say, but you haven't spoken with us.
So the Board of Health had thoughts about it, the Milton Coalition had thoughts about it, and the Chamber of Commerce had thoughts about it, and we've heard from all three of them. So I think you're making an excellent point, Ms. Haggerty. So what we could potentially do is, on the 8th, just look at the language and then circulate it for public comment, and then have it again on the 22nd. And if people have additional thoughts, they could come in there, and then we could certify it, and then.
Yep, I can do that.
And then members, other articles, suggestions for the fall town meeting. Through the process of, not to get too back into the MBTA community's discussion, but with the input of citizens and the town halls, some refinement to that, but given the timeline, it probably won't happen in that fall town meeting unless there's something that's glaringly obvious that everyone's missed.
Okay.
But for some reason we get the economic feasibility study back.
Oh, right.
That would allow us to move up the affordable housing meeting to be in October.
And I should have flagged, but MPIC's term in charge does expire at the fall. Technically at the fall. There may be an article potentially related to MPIC, but I haven't received anything quite yet.
So I think we are discussing that. So we're right now of action items, and we should probably pick a date in the fall for us to come back. Board prior to town meeting.
Okay.
To start that conversation?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. So maybe September sometime?
And then Planning Committee, I know that Mr. Hasha is hoping to come in either on the 8th or the 22nd, so we can give him the dates of those, but I don't know that they're once going. All right, going twice. Let's move on to Town Council and Labor Council update, potential recommendation for Labor Council services. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We completed interviews with 5 Labor Council firms over Tuesday and Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we interviewed town council firms with a group that honors the chairs of the Conservation Commission, the Board of Appeals, the Planning Board, the Town Moderator, and the Town Clerk. So I think that was in terms of those types of bodies that would interact regularly with Town Council. So we discussed a bit in terms of how we felt the interviews went. We're doing some follow-up homework on the firms that lead for the town, doing some reference checks, and then we'll reconvene as groups to moving forward.
Great. Well, now I know why Mr. Walsh is here. I think we have a discussion about the future use and 525 Adams Street and a request for proposals, process, and goals. Am I guessing that you're joining us here, Mr. Walsh? Thank you. The best use of this land. I asked them as we were driving into East Milton yesterday, and that was their verdict. So I hope that's what you've got lined up for us. Some bubble tea.
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, if you would, I'd like the opportunity just to make a couple of comments in
Please.
general. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to address the board with the two newest members. My chance to say welcome. And I wanted to explain very, very briefly where we are. So, quick update. I think, as you know, the headquarters are done, and the headquarters station is done, and we're the FSBC, Fire Station Building Committee, the fire department. We're all, it came out terrific, and if you haven't had a chance to really see it and go in, I'd encourage you to do so. And if I could help you with that, a tour, I'd be happy to do that. So, one thing, the East Milton station, commonly referred to as Engine 2, has actually, the new one has actually begun. If any of you have gone by, you've seen the fencing, and you've seen a lot of piles of dirt. But it's really slow-moving stuff right now. They had to do a lot of work with the dirt, make sure there was nothing dangerous underneath where they're going to pour it. Had to really work to confirm where the utilities would come. Will serve both the new fire station and the existing St. Agatha's Rectory, which is right next door, right close by. And so, even though that work, the building committee feels it's important to have a groundbreaking ceremony. And one of the reasons I'm here is to starting the pouring the pad and building the structure, right? That's the point. I will be happy to get the date when it's finally nailed down to see the opportunity for any or all of you, if you could attend. You know, the East Milton station, significantly smaller than the head to attend that groundbreaking. And just as the course of the project, at that point, it'll be about 12 months to completion. And we'll have two other ceremonies. We did this at the headquarters, right? The highest beam at the building. It's a very quick thing. And then, of course, the ribbon cutting, which we hope will be in about 12 months. Now, interestingly enough, I know you have the item on the agenda for the old. One, especially for the new members, one very, very brief update. That station is the second station that's occupied that location, and I don't find that many people know that. It came on 51 to 1952, right in that area. Ironically, in 1954, the state and federal government decided they were going to sink the expressway. So that station was of streets around that sunken expressway. And I got to tell you, there's no doubt in my mind that we would not have rebuilt that state, the expressway versus the Quincy side. And it takes a day, the fire engine, a full minute to get around right over to the post office. Capabilities, I could probably hit the post office with a rock from the East Milton Fire Station. So, in losing a minute, the national standard for all fire stations is to get to 90% less. So losing a minute's a big deal, and frankly, that's on a good time. They lose a good minute and a half anytime it's around morning or evening. The station right out on Adams Street, a very wide street, very great lines of sight, visibility, and they'll have a light there. But they can go left, and most of the 75% significantly faster. For the folks that are on the Quincy side, East Milton Square, and they can get quickly up to those things. So, you know, it's one of the reasons, by the way, there was no ambiguity about we had to do the headquarters station first. And everything were all there, and some of them were really archaic. I mean, they had like a ticker tape system. We kind of really archaic. I mean, they had like a ticker tape system. We kind of did a film at town meeting at one point. But in any event, but this, what was the best second station? It's really because of that. Serve the area they're supposed to in a timely fashion. So I'm here East Milton Station, and for very selfish reasons, we're going to need more funding. When we started 7+ years ago, both our owner's project manager and the architects that we were working with said, look, if you put out to bid all 3 stations, you'll get a much better price, because it'll be a nice, long project for them. And so and COVID did 2 things that are plaguing us even to today. The first thing it did is it drove up the prices. And so we had a funding formula for the fire stations, which was terrific. It's a special purpose stabilization fund that says, as the retiring debt from the 6 billion retires, we froze it and said that will fund the stations. Well, the station's more expensive now, and the cost of money is more expensive. So selling the old East Milton station and allocating it to the fire station so that we can complete Atherton. There's also no doubt in my mind, to be more than once about this. We're probably going to have to find another funding source to complete the Atherton. We thought the special purpose stabilization fund was going to do it, complete all 3 stations. It doesn't happen to our favor. But there's no doubt we could use the proceeds. There are areas in town as I travel around that I recognize as being a fire station guy. And I know of that would really be a serious buyer. And for the old station, if you sell it, and I don't know, I know of that would really be a serious buyer. And for the old station, if you sell it, and I don't know, who do I direct that to? Nick, okay. I don't want to field that, and I know you probably have other. Yeah, I think that's it. So, again, welcome. Thank you. I hope that helped a little bit on the fire station project. Hold of me. Be happy to take you on a little tour. It came out terrific. You know, even from little things. If I'm just the glass doors in the front. Were recently completed to get ideas, and we stumbled across that, and the fire chief. Recently completed to get ideas, and we stumbled across that, and the fire chief made at that town. He said, you know, sometimes they break, don't they? You go to open them up and you can't open them, right? And that's happened to me. He said, well, when ours break, you know, not being able to open them is a Google and find it. There are cases in the country, you know, not being able to open them is a Google and find it. There are cases in the country where a fire truck has had to drive through a door to get to a call. So in any event, those doors there, they just won't. They're designed. They just won't. They're designed. They cannot get stuck closed, and they also are incredibly much easier. They're all of these doors are so large, whether the old overhead doors or those. They all have an electronic option to open them, but sometimes that, who knows, power failure, that fails. And so this cheap manual lever, and he grabbed it again and he easily opened all 4 bays. And that's a big safety advantage. And then especially, there's a nursery school on one side and one on the other side. The Council on Aging is right behind it. Town Hall is right in front. It's a busy spot. And having all of that pure glass wall for the firefighter there just adds a whole level of safety. And with that, I'll stop my pitch on behalf of the fire stations.
And it's a beautiful station, and you're right to date. So questions from the members?
If I could, just Mr. Chair, just to add to kind of put some additional color on this. So in terms of where we are at is with 12 months 14 months will be out of use, it's time to start thinking about what we want to do there. You heard from Mr. Walsh in terms of, sell and move on and use that additional proceeds to help a future capital project, in particular Atherton Station. If we're going to do an RFP, then we'll need to think, we just want the expectations clear in that and the goals clear in that, so folks are responding to what we're looking for. If it's not to sell it, it's to lease it, so we have an option, then we need to kind of make a decision around that. Are we going to require that the building stay? Do we have attachments to the building that we want it to stay, or are we okay with no restrictions if we sell it or lease it? Those are kind of the two big go, no go questions. And then ultimately, any kind of sale or a long-term, like a 99-year lease that's effectively a sale, that kind of land transaction would require a town meeting vote. So in thinking about the timeline to get to town meeting, is a scheduling question in terms of, do we go to town meeting, request authorization to sell it or long-term lease it, and then we do the procurement, or does the select board want to do the procurement and say, okay, we pick somebody, now it's subject to town meeting, and deliver kind of a done deal to town meeting? So there's different ways to sequence these and different ways to game this out, but we need to kind of start engaging on those conversations earnestly. Not necessarily, obviously, this evening, but thinking about that timeline, as we saw with the town farm RFP. These can take a long time, but we do want to keep the wheels of government trying to move here, so we have resolution on this project one way or the other.
Mr. Clay?
In keeping with what others have said, trying to get community involvement, is there a way we can somehow do that, let people know, maybe some kind of an event at the Arts Center? I don't know.
No, I
Have we
agree
done that,
100%
or,
with that.
you
And
know?
it's, again, getting to the point where, are there any things that folks are we just opening it up to kind of broad feedback? Do we want to go in with the
Some
board's
parameters.
inclined more in this way? What kind of feedback do you have about that idea? So that, again, that makes sense. It's smart to do. We would certainly want to enroll that in. It's just a question of what, and kind of with what, how much detail do we go out, so that there's actually something to respond to and think about.
I'm just thinking it's always nice for anything to go out before decisions
Yeah.
made. So if you can go out there before the decision, I know in the case we have here, we're behind the 8 ball because it's already been made.
Right.
But this is a case where
Yeah.
we could, and I'm happy to do whatever I can, it's my neighborhood, to help set something up. Talk some more.
No, I think that's a good suggestion. It'd probably be good to get like the chamber to weigh into, like what do they
Yep.
think about,
Yep.
and then for all of us, I think we should be thinking about worth doing like a 99-year lease, like we're doing with Town Farm, or a total sale. I think whether we keep the building or not, those are all the building. I can't imagine some people have. That building's not great. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, if I could, just after our project started, we actually became aware of a problem at that station. And in fact, we had to spend some $50,000. That station was originally brought into service, both the first time and in this particular building. It had 2 engines. In fact, at one point, it actually had a ladder truck before, probably 2.5. 2 fire engines in those bays. We spent $50,000 shoring up the floor, but it's still not strong enough for 2 fire engines. So at some point, someone, depending on whatever use they determine it to be, will have to do a real analysis and decide, what they can really do with that building. Firehouse Subs was a name that came out.
As long as there's bubble tea there. So it sounds like, there would be, I don't, Mr. Cohen, in terms of like thinking about the, getting some resident input on that.
And so maybe we should be working towards a date in September, October, once people or folks are back, kind of right after, get through the start of school, try
Yeah.
to do something over at the Art Center or something, just, and keep it broad. There's a future reuse kind of visioning and feedback type conversation.
Yeah, and I think, that would give us a little bit of time to at least get some sense of what the market might hold if we wanted to sell the site. You know, because I know, for example, the youth task force may want to think about that as a youth center, and then what would we lose in revenue in terms of creating that versus finding other space for a youth center. So I know there'll be lots of interesting ideas, no doubt, that will come up.
And I
Actually,
should
not
have.
just the neighborhood, beyond the
Yeah,
neighborhood.
yeah.
And I should have noted, we did do, we tried to do an expression of interest phase where we put it out to say, give us your thoughts and your feedback. And we've had good conversations with folks who are interested. People have been reluctant to put in a proposal out there, or even the concept of a proposal out there because we haven't engaged in much of a process. They didn't want their name tied to something that's just kind of concept. They didn't want somebody else to steal the idea. So it
Right.
left us
Yeah.
in kind of a tough spot, but we have had, you know, one-on-one conversations with a few people who are interested in potentially purchasing the station, but we know that would need to go through a public vetting before any decisions are made.
Yeah, I think maybe if we could target end of September, early October.
Okay.
And just, you know, in the meantime, we'll start just percolating the ideas around if folks have, if there's like something on the town website, maybe if people just have ideas or thoughts about what the old station could be, might be a good way to get some of the ideas turning. But we will we'll definitely take the recommendation very seriously in the committee in terms of the money.
I could take just a
One more thing.
brief amount more of your time. The one thing when I stressed about the beautiful new headquarters that I was remiss in not mentioning, an extremely important part about that building is the absolute increase in safety and health features for the firefighters. Just isolating the engine bays so the fumes aren't rising up to where they sleep and eat, to dress down areas, to wash down areas, et cetera. So all things, there are many things that are important, but that clearly is an important feature of new buildings. And all three of them need it.
I did the tour, I saw that, the washdown areas, it was pretty impressive.
Very cool.
Pretty
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Did I miss the inclusion of I saw for so our next item is the town administration. In the packet, I think there was the addendum for for setting the next.
We have an evaluation from yourself and Aaron Bradley. That's what we've received so far.
Just for me and for you on the pay side. I know what my evaluation was. Did Carla turn in anything that we can, do we have anything that we can approve?
And just since there was only the two of them, we didn't take any. Rather.
Okay.
Was Roxanne also included in that?
Did Roxanne not submit a redness must here?
And
Well,
this year?
Well, we were having these discussions. Maybe, Mr. Milano, if I come into the, well, I would say, Mr.
Just the period ends today.
Right.
And so I'm just saying the period ends today, I should.
No.
I don't have anything.
This is for last year.
I don't have
And he
anything
wasn't on
to
the
do with
board.
that. I just started. They're just like these two. They don't have anything to do
So
with last year's. This year's,
well,
correct?
You would have,
So, but they're not doing one for this year.
okay. I'll talk to Carla about it,
Okay.
reason.
Moving forward, correct.
Moving forward.
To try to reset.
That's the
So
next
then-
item, right?
There's not like a perfect solution to this between the election
Right.
cycle and the fiscal years.
Right.
Yep.
Just in terms of like having one more input, even if it's just for a month, but that's, let me see what. And then either way, let's put it on our July 8th agenda and I'll, whatever she's gotten to it, whatever she and I can cook up. And do you need us to approve the amendment language, yes?
Yes, this will just formally change the cycle to get away from the issue, go through the process again in 6 months, just to get it to a December to December timeframe.
Got it. So I would take a motion on, if anybody is so inclined. I'm also happy to do it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to amend the,
Approve the amendment.
approve the amendment to the employment agreement with the town administrator regarding the Section 5 performance evaluation.
Great. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Looks like I'm going to have a busy day at Town Hall on Thursday. Just in time for the 4th. We are now at board committee appointments and reappointments. I would be very happy if somebody wanted to speed read through the motions here.
Want me to?
If you'd like to do that.
Do I need to say something ahead of time or just start reading?
So-
Motion to approve, right?
So
Okay.
right here, you could just read this one here.
Okay. Let me grab that. Okay, let me take it from you.
Unless we have any discussion about this. I did talk to, on the Affordable Housing Trust, I confirmed that everybody who is on there currently is reapplying and interested in reapplying, so.
Correct.
That's pretty much the only one that I looked at.
Do you want me to put them all and read?
So just,
Approve them all together or
you can
one at
just
a
do the
time?
proposed motion here.
I move to approve the following individuals to the Affordable Housing Trust for the one-year term. Sean Bentley, Thomas Callahan, Kevin Chisholm Jr., Kathleen Conlon, Julie Kramer, Eric Hokinson, Warren Lizio, and Matthew Morong.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And we've already appointed Mr. Daly to that committee, so then you go to this
Okay.
next one.
Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee for a one-year term. Kathleen Conlon, David Goodine, and Raju Pathak.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Daly. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Move to approve the following individuals to the Council on Aging Board of Directors for a three-year term. David Cornish and Yvonne Reddy.
Second. Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to
I
approve.
think you went backwards, actually. I
Oh, you
folded
got
my
two
pages
page.
weird,
Oh, you
yeah.
got two pages, sorry.
So here we go.
Where we at? Two page, gotcha. Move to appoint Sherry Paulo as Associate Member of the Council on Aging Board of Directors for a one-year term.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to appoint the following individuals as advisory, move to appoint Marie Zinkus as ex officio member of the Council on Aging Board of Directors for a one-year term.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to appoint the following individuals as advisory members to the Council on Aging Board of Directors for a one-year term. Caroline Kinsel and Sarah Turan.
Second.
Figured my
Seconded by Mr.
pronunciation.
Daly. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Milton Landing Committee for a one-year term. Richard Burke, Ted Carroll, Thomas McCarthy, and Nicholas Milano.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Yep.
Move to reappoint the following individual to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee for a one-year term. Nancy Chisholm, Marita Manning Cronin, Maura Doherty, Fiona Javon, William Madden, and Fred Taylor.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to appoint Helen Russell to the Shade Tree Advisory Committee for a one-year term.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Sign Review Committee for a one-year term. Lawrence Johnson, Deborah Azarad Savona, Laura Simondi, and John Sakowitz.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to appoint Stephen Gentile to the Sign Review Committee for a one-year term.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Equity and Justice for All Advisory Committee for a two-year term. Rabbi Alfred Benjamin, Sarah Myrie, Sarah Porter, and Ralph Parent.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Move to appoint Jonathan Bolkery to the Equity and Justice for All Advisory Committee for a two-year term.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Local Historic District Study Committee for a one-year term. Andrew Hoffman, Larry Laufer, Ryan McLean, and Brian O'Halloran.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Payment in lieu of Taxes Pilot Committee for a one-year term. Jennifer Hine, Matthew Keswick, Nicholas Milano, and C. Robert Reitz.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to reappoint the following individuals to the Traffic Commission for a one-year term. Marion Driscoll and Steve Geister.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to appoint the following individuals to the Youth Task Force for a one-year term. Griffin Angus, Christina Lillehook, and Rachel Posar.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to approve the.
Yeah, you did it.
I did it.
Woohoo.
And with many, many thanks to all of those town individuals, including you, Mr. Milano, who made a couple of appearances there, for your time and dedication and volunteering for the town. We really, really appreciate it. And the quick reading of that is really to just emphasizes how much we appreciate it. We don't we need to really talk about it. We just appreciate it that much. So we have discussion approval meeting 5. Do any comments on the minutes, or I'll take a motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We sent out a note through the town website, and just in case you notice a change, it does incorporate an estimate for the override that was approved by voters in a town meeting earlier this year. All of that change would have been felt on the final tax bills. So it was adjusted from the preliminary. The preliminaries were adjusted from the prior fiscal year to account for the. There are resources if you're looking for assistance through the assessors and the Council on Aging and others on the tax burden. In additional news, the Assistant Director Diane Frazier has given notice that she'll be leaving the town, as well as the state. She'll be moving out of state, so we wish her the best of luck. She'll be with us. Have town engineer posting still out there, department back to where it needs to be. The new Veterans Service Officer has begun, or has been in Alex Ortiz. They're cleaning out his office right now in the Council on Aging. So we look forward to welcoming him, and he should be, again, working as of next week. In addition to that, we have Commissioner in Bridgewater and West Bridgewater, Michael White. He'll start July 14th. That position has been vacant since December. So again, we're excited to get that office as well back up. That concludes it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The chair's report. Oh, I should ask any questions for Mr. Milano from his report first. It's unfortunate. I know that she's pursuing a professional opportunity by going to law school in Texas, so we understand that.
She's a law school grad.
Months, and it's always worth saying it is for all of our residents to just remember how hard, Mr. Milano, to you and to all of the other folks that do the hard work at keeping running. We had a presentation from DPW. Probably worth thinking about who our next, maybe you and I, Mr. Cohen, can talk about who might come in for a future meeting when we do an agenda planning session. But it's really, in a be pretty nasty to each other. I think it's just really important to remember, you can send me nasty messages is fine, but please be gentle and kind to our town employees who are doing the very best that they can do running, and we're again very grateful for that.
Thank you.
For my chair's report, I just want to, successful, even sessions out on Governor Hutchinson Field. I know the Copeland Foundation is involved in that. I know Mr. Wells is very involved in that, and many, many other volunteers. The Celtic Music Celebration on Sunday. And so thank you to everybody who came out to that and made it a great success. on Turner's Pond, and I recommend if you are going on a walk on Turner's Pond, there's a lovely bench that's set, I guess, that would be on the south, selected by her daughter. It's a very lovely location, and there was a good turnout of folks at that dedication. I'm trying to think of what else we've done in the last week. I don't know that there's that much else. Shout out. I know there was, we talked about the water main and sinkhole and everything. There was the DPW and the fire department had a very busy weekend. I think that was that 2 weekends ago? And so we're grateful for their response to all those late activities. So with that being said, I don't think we have anything for public comment response. Future meeting dates, we have July 8th and July 22nd. Future agenda items.
We already filled up the
We've
meeting.
pretty much filled up. I know that we were going to put Mr. Hasha in the Climate Justice Committee. I might suggest to him the July 22nd meeting for their presentation. And then I know for the first executive session, we can skip it. Are we in for this second executive session?
If we could, yes, please.
Okay. So I am going to propose that we move to adjourn from open session and enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Clerical Unit of Southeastern Public Employees Association, Milton Professional Management Association, Milton Public Employees Association, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, Milton Police Milton Police Association, Milton Superior Officers, Milton Library Association, based on my belief that the discussion of the matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session. Can I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Daly. This is a roll call vote to move into executive session and adjourn. Mr. Daly?
Yes.
Ms. Hegarty?
Yes.
Mr. Cohane?
Yes.
And myself, yes. That will conclude the open portion of this meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.